Hello, I'm back with a baby. The best, warmest, exciting welcome to the world, my son, Ethos Ergon Warder. I really just wanted to have a moment to document everything that happened during my induction, my labor, the delivery, because it was a wild journey. Maybe it'll be helpful for someone. What I learned throughout this entire process was how little control we actually have over anything and everything, and that the birth plan needs to be changed to birth preferences, because if you try to stick to a plan, chances are God might have different plans for you. Let me just start from the beginning of what happened or what has been happening in my pregnancy. I kind of went dark a little bit because I was just dealing with a lot, started to have higher blood pressure results, and we had to go to the ER. They had to check my blood pressure. They were monitoring the baby for like 5 hours. They monitored my BP for 5 hours. And then just kind of, we've been in this like monitoring state to see if it develops into preeclampsia, which is pretty serious, could lead to seizures, could lead to cutting off nutrients and oxygen to the baby and all sorts of things. We have been monitoring it week by week. And there was a point where we went to the hospital 1 week, and then the next week, and then the next week, we were told at our doctor's appointment that the longer we wait to have this baby, the more chances are something could develop. Oh, are you trying to latch? Yep. Ow. Ooh, ooh, my son decided to relatch, and it was kind of painful, but he's actually asleep. So anyways, we went into our normal doctor's appointment at the birthing house that I originally wanted to have my baby at. Realized that we are no longer qualified to have a baby at a birthing house because I was now considered a high risk. And then the last baby doctor's appointment, we got my blood results back and saw that there actually has been a trend in my blood work that is showing that things were starting to progress towards preeclampsia, showing that my liver was now starting to work a little overtime to hold on to this baby. And I really trust my midwives, and they've been doing so amazing. And I know that me and Dylan are both, well, Dylan mostly is kind of, he can be abrasive when he has an opinion on something, which I'm so grateful for. She basically told us that we should get to the hospital and induce, to not wait any longer. The longer I try to hold on to my baby and being pregnant, that the more likely preeclampsia could develop. And then when you go into the hospital during an emergency situation, your options as far as like how you want the birth to happen and all of that kind of goes out the window, right? Because hospitals are meant to respond quickly. Dylan and I, after having many conversations about blood pressure, after trying to do everything holistic and natural by changing my diet, and even though things started to look a little bit better, they still weren't right where we needed them. We decided that we were going to follow that advice and induce at the hospital. Because originally we were like, from our first experience at the hospital, when we had to go get our blood, when I had to get my blood pressure checked in the first place, it was a horrific experience. And we just felt like there was a lot of fear mongering. But then again, we also came in there a little apprehensive and stressed out. And we were about to like choose to try and deliver the baby at home without any midwives or any supervision, and just like trusting in God. Which I'm not saying don't trust in God, but you'll wait till the end of the story. You'll see how God actually plays into every bit of this story. So we decide to induce. We get to the hospital. We set up our appointment at 7:30 a.m. and we basically don't start the actual entire process until about 9 because the doctors are busy, all of that. But when I tell you, Dylan and I showed up to this place like completely ready. We had the decision matrix tree that Dylan created for, making all the birth preferences written a plan. We had our wagon all packed up, ready for a couple of days. Honestly, I thought we were only going to be there for like 2 days, 3 days max. And we ended up being there 6. So we showed up with our wagon. I had a bunch of snacks, packed everything. Dylan had like 2 articles of clothing. We show up to the hospital. Everyone's kind of like giggling at us. They're like, "Are you guys moving in?" And we're like, "Well, we are going to be prepared. That's for sure." They started me with a small dose of misoprostol or something like that. I can't remember the name of it, but it was basically the oral induction process to just start getting my cervix effaced and softened, ripened basically enough to stretch and begin to dilate. I'm not going to get into whole technicalities on that. Y'all could do some research, okay? And if you're pregnant, you'll have classes on all of this. But yeah, so basically they start the induction, and that didn't work. So that entire day we spent probably like 12 hours trying to use just the very light doses of misoprostol or whatever the heck it was. And eventually we were like, okay, we're open to taking Pitocin. We were trying to avoid Pitocin because from what we understand, it induces, it creates a longer labor. It's like there's, obviously it's not natural oxytocin. Basically, Pitocin is oxytocin to get your body to start going into contractions. And from that, your cervix should ideally begin to dilate enough to go into labor and have this baby. And so we started with the lowest dose of Pitocin up to 4, and then we kept increasing it. And so I started having some crazy contractions. I can't remember if it was that same day or the next day. I think it was the next day, day 2, where I was having like the worst contractions because they were able to dilate me enough to like 1 centimeter. My cervix was not responding very well. And they stuck a Foley balloon in me, which basically manually dilates your cervix. And so I had my cervix being manually dilated by this balloon, which I'll show you a picture of it here. And I was on Pitocin, which was giving me oxytocin to get me to start having regular contractions to dilate and get ready to have this baby. And so we did that for hours. I kid you not. And let me tell you, laboring and being in an active labor and having your body with those contractions, I've never experienced anything like that before. The contractions, you hear people talk about contractions and like, yeah, the contractions are so painful, but like, what does it feel like? I never understood. I'm like, is it just like stinging pains, blah, blah. It's like the worst period cramps you could ever have. You feel like your insides are just like churning. You feel like you need to use the bathroom. You feel like it's like really hard to explain, but it's definitely not painful. So I had my little birthing comb, and I was trying to like redirect the pain into my fingers and hands, and I was moaning and groaning and in pain for hours, for like probably 6-7 hours. I was in that labor and my contractions were normal. But at the end of the day, my balloon still didn't fall out, because the idea with the Foley balloon is it's supposed to manually dilate you from at least 4 centimeters to 6 centimeters, 4 to 6, like between that range, and it would fall out, but it wasn't falling out. So I had a nurse come in and she's like, do some squats and blah, blah, blah. It's right there. She checked me. The balloon was like out, but it wasn't like coming out and falling out on its own. So she was like, I didn't say this, but like you can move around and try and like force it out. Like, okay, if it's already detached, I'm going to try and force it out. And so I'm moving, I'm squatting, I'm doing things like trying to get this thing to come out of me, like basically deliver a tiny, 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 tiny baby. And eventually, like before the doctor came, I wanted to have it out so that they can continue this more mild progression of this labor. And it still didn't fall out. So shamelessly, I went into the bathroom. I knew it was looser, and I literally like pulled it out. I pulled it out, and I don't know if I should have, but I did, and it came out. And I was surprised because I did not expect the balloon to be that big, but like 4 centimeters. It was such a relief. It felt like So nice to have that out. And alas, I still was not dilated very much. I dilated to, I think, 4 centimeters, and then hours of increasing the Pitocin, like 2 every 30 minutes. I only got my cervix to dilate to about 6 centimeters by the end of day 3. And so by day 3, the doctor came, check. I did so many cervix checks, guys. Oh my gosh, so many checks. It was so frustrating. Basically said that I'm not progressing very much. I also had to get the epidural because my blood pressure was raising higher. So they had me get the epidural because it was either get the epidural and stop experiencing like so much pain so that my blood pressure doesn't rise, or give me magnesium to lower my blood pressure, but it works against the Pitocin, so it'll increase labor time. So out of weighing all the options, I was like, let's just do the epidural, even though I didn't want to do the epidural. It was like not the one thing. It was like one of the major things I was trying to avoid. I just wanted a normal vaginal birth and couldn't. My blood pressure was too high, too risky. So, and he was already trying to come out. He was already in my pelvic area wanting to come out, but he was stuck there. He was stuck there for a total of 6 hours. So his head was just like he was trying to pull out, but it just wasn't happening. My cervix was not opening. There was something wrong. He's been bulging. So we popped my water. We tried to do everything to get into a natural labor, and it just wasn't happening. And so by day 3, which is now we're in 3 days, March 1st, and they're like, you know what, you're not dilating. You've been like this for hours. We could either continue increasing the Pitocin and wait to see a couple more hours of how you progress, or I recommend a C-section. When I heard that word, gosh, it makes me emotional now. I was frustrated because the entire process and labor and like how I was managing pain, I was really depending on God and asking God to just help me deliver this baby. And the one thing I wanted to avoid majorly was a C-section. And I just didn't think that was in my cards. I thought that I was going to be able to have a natural birth. But after facing these decisions, which mind you, my husband was so helpful throughout the entire process because he helped me make all of these decisions. He did all the research before they put anything into my body. When somebody tried to recommend something that was more aggressive than what we wanted, he put a stop to it. He was just so good at advocating for us the entire time, and I'm so grateful that he was there. I can't even explain how much relief it was to have him make these decisions for me and know that he had our best interests in mind. I was so grateful to have a man who is willing to confront and collide with people when it went against what our beliefs are or what we're trying to do or accomplish. So I was grateful. So anyways, after having them leave the room, me and Dylan decided we had to discuss, what are our options here and what do we actually want to do. And by the end of it, after crying out to the Lord and just feeling like I was frustrated because I felt like God was punishing me for a moment, but then every time I felt that, my counteraction was, this is all happening for a reason. God sent us to the hospital and didn't allow us to have birth at the birthing house for a reason. And I just had to keep trusting and having faith in God's plan, even though I didn't agree with it and even though I wanted something different. And so and I still mourn that because I really wanted to have a vaginal birth and a natural birth, and C-sections are hard. And so we made the decision. We're like, you know what, we've been in this for hours and he's stuck there in your pelvis. His head is like, shaping in there. And it's just eventually his heart rate kind of declined at one point, and I was just putting too much risk at hand for my son. And I was just like, let's do the C-section. And so pretty shortly after, the whole team comes in, they're introducing themselves. They already have in place where, since I already got the epidural, they just increased the different medicine, a lidocaine or something, to numb me from the bottom down, and then took me into the operating room. And my husband was able to join me, thank God. So they had him change and stuff, and it just all happened so very quickly. They moved the whole bed. They brought me to the surgery room, and my legs went pretty numb very quickly. We arrived. Dylan was able to come in, and whatever medicine that they gave me to numb me had me in these ferocious like shakes and shivers and quakes, and my whole body was just like, not my whole body because my bottom half was numb, but my whole top half, I was shaking so much. And I don't know, I was strong in the moment. They kept complimenting me on how well I'm handling everything, and I just tried not to cry and tried not to get too emotional, and instead decided to pray and ask God to be with me. And so they put up the little privacy sheet, the blue sheet, the famous blue C-section sheet, to cover me from what they were doing to my body. But Dylan got some pictures, and they were live photos, so you can kind of see like that them pulling him out of me, which is kind of wild to like watch my body get to like have a C-section. It's just weird to watch. So they pull him out, and I get to hold my baby for the first time. And then after that whole experience, like, God, when I first heard his cry, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And I was just so relieved that they were able to get my son out, and that he was here, and that I just felt like a huge sense of relief that like laboring is over. He's here. Now I just got to recover. Come to find out, at the very end of it, the doctor, after, I'm sitting in the little recovery room waiting to get discharged to the postpartum recovery rooms, the doctor came and told me that they actually, after doing the C-section, realized that the umbilical cord of Ethos was very short. On average, it's supposed to be 56 centimeters, but mine was 36. So Ethos was trying, my son was trying to descend, but his umbilical cord was so short connected to the placenta that he was essentially playing tug of war with the placenta. And so even if I wanted to deliver vaginally, it wouldn't have worked because they were pulling against each other. He wouldn't have been able to come out vaginally regardless. And when I heard that, I knew that this is why God sent us to the hospital. This is why God allowed us to experience all of the shifting of the preferences weeks before the actual induction, because he had to get us used to the hospital, because we were very stubborn. We didn't want any of this to happen. And it just happened, and we just surrendered to it. And that was the one thing I continue to tell myself is, I'm just going to continue to surrender to you, Lord, and may your will be done. And I trust that this is all happening because of a reason that I can't foresee. And that was the reason. So all this to say is that God is so good. He is so good. And even though all of these pains and challenges occur, a lot of them can feel like punishment. A lot of them can feel like God is not giving us what we asked for because he hates us or something like that. You could spin it however you want, but in hindsight, and now I'm reflecting on everything, I could see that God absolutely was with us during this entire process. There was a ton of lessons and challenges that we overcame within just a couple of days of this induction process and labor. And I could just see it all of how God was just there with us and why he brought us to the hospital, why he couldn't let me have my vaginal delivery. And so I'm just grateful. We really went through so much, and I'm going to do another episode with Dylan and I both kind of sharing more of our perspective on what we were experiencing, but I just wanted to share my own personal experience of what it was like. And I'm just, even though I don't have a positive birth story that I really wanted to share, because I was like really looking forward to doing a positive birth story vlog and like sometimes it just doesn't happen like that. And you know what? At the end of the day, I'm not saying that my experience was negative, because what I saw there at the hospital, the nurses, the doctors, every single one of them were so kind. They were so nice. They were so helpful. All of them were rooting for us. We had experienced all of the shift changes, and all of them were amazing. And so that really helped change my perspective on the hospital in general. So I'm not saying this isn't a positive birth story. It's just my birth story. It doesn't have to be considered positive or negative. It just is. And overall, I learned some valuable lessons. I've strengthened my faith in the Lord. I've got to have, you know, a baby boy born who had perfect APGAR scores. He was like a 999, whatever that means. But he was healthy, 6 pounds, 14 ounces, and just a healthy baby boy to be born at 37 weeks and 6 days. Like he came out strong and immediately latched in the OR room, which is like amazing. And he's had no trouble eating since. So he's a hungry boy. So, anyways, this isn't a story to scare anybody away from hospital births or like having children at all, because honestly, he is the biggest blessing in my life right now. I'm just in awe of how beautiful and perfect he is. Like I can't stop staring at him. He's so cute and so beautiful and so perfect. And I wish more people had babies, because even though I'm like in the newborn trenches right now, the adjustment period, I wouldn't replace it for the world. I'm in love with this boy, my child, like so excited to just be a mom. And even like the relationship with Dylan and I, and seeing how he advocates for us and how much, like, my trust for my husband has developed so much stronger than it ever has before. I trust that man with my life. I trust our son with that man. I love that man. And I'm just in awe of him as well. And just overall, my entire experience, even though I didn't get a single thing that I wanted out of the experience, except for a healthy son, which is the main thing. So that's all that matters. It's still overall a positive birth story experience. So, and my husband's back. Hi, baby. That's the end of this little story. Here's my wonderful husband that I was just talking about how amazing you are.
You are.
Yeah.
Want some dinner or some food?
Ooh, yeah. I am definitely hungry. I love you. All right. So, Donna out. My husband's going to make us some food. I hope you guys enjoyed this little quick story. Love you. Bye.